Everyone has a story, and your story is the key to setting you free. I'm Washayla Sananda. Thank you for joining me today. So, I just got back from a week-long retreat at the Pyramids of Florida, where I was a co-host with Heidi and Thaddeus of Primal Hacker. And it was just such a delightful, beautiful group of people. The weather was perfect. The pyramids hold this amazing, powerful energy. There are healing waters there, and just everything about it was beyond my expectations. And there was an opportunity while we were there for me to share some of my stories and also for everybody there to share their stories. And so this group of people came together who didn't previously know each other. Some did, but most of us did not know each other before. And just got so deeply connected through story, through sharing our lives, through sharing these processes of embodiment and going within and sharing together about what we experienced. And you know what I found is, especially on day one and a little bit on day two, people were really shy and didn't want to say too much or reveal too much about what was really going on within them. But by day three, people were cracking open and just letting it pour out and sharing these deep transformational experiences, sharing their stories from the past, sharing their desires for the future. And this is how we connect. And isn't it interesting that it really takes something to feel comfortable to share our stories, unless we're just naturally born doing it and used to it. I know for me, when I wrote my book, The Love You Crave, A Course in Ascension, Alchemy, and Connection to the Divine, I tell a lot of personal stories in that book. And I was terrified to release that book to the public. I'm like, okay, now it's out there in the world. I can't take it back. It's out there. And what I found is once I got over that fear of sharing some of my deepest stories, that fear turned into liberation. It freed me from the tether of what those stories being in me represented, or what not sharing those stories represented. So our stories are our way of sharing our life and our experiences and our interpretation and perception of our experiences. And what I hear over and over from people and clients is, well, I'm afraid to tell anyone about that, or I've never told anyone that before. And my thinking is always, well, why not? This is what makes you special and unique. And there is this deep desire to be accepted. We want people to accept us and like us, and we do not want to be cast out. I think in human history, being cast out, especially in tribal times, being cast out meant likely you're going to die. Being rejected by the tribe meant you're on your own and you're probably not going to survive very long. So we became conformative. We became followers of rules, and we became subjective to being told what to do and not necessarily following our true hearts. I really think it started with the desire to be accepted and not be cast out. And this is a time, the ascension is a time where we're expanding, our hearts are opening, there's more energy. We're going to be having more and more multidimensional experiences, extra dimensional experiences, experiences that are beyond the normal, mystical, magical, extraterrestrial, extra dimensional, timeline jumping. All of these things are happening. And you know what? When you start to share your stories with others that are at least somewhat like-minded, the chances are that those people are going to share their stories too. What I found is, in my sharing of my book and now getting on podcasts and doing summits and all these things, My sharing it invites other people to share. And that sharing breaks those conformative restraints. It's like breaking out of jail, breaking out of what has held us back, breaking out of our resistance. All of those things set us free, and that desire to share stories uplift and upgrade other people when shared in a transformational way, or a way that, yeah, this happened to me and it could happen to you, or something like this could happen to you, because it opens people's mind, especially when you're sharing your mystical, magical experiences, your extra dimensional contact, your timeline stories, all of these things. When you share those stories, it gives permission to other people not only to share their stories, but to have more experiences like that themselves. And this is really my reason for sharing. I love telling stories, so I've always been a storyteller. But in sharing my story, it's not just for the sake of, having you think, oh, wow, that's great. That's amazing that that happened to you. I mean, I don't need to be revered. I just want to share what I've experienced, in the hopes that that gives you permission to share your experiences. It gives you permission to open up doorways that maybe you hadn't looked down before, or go through portals, or to jump timelines, or experience your guides or your multidimensional star family, and all of those things. When I share my story, you get permission to share your story more. And when you share your story, you're giving someone else permission to share those. So, what I can say for sure is, after my book came out, and since I've been sharing my multidimensional stories, so many people have messaged me, emailed me, made comments on my videos, and just shared and shared and shared their stories. And this, to me, is just the beauty of getting to be the person that says, hey, open up and share more. Because as we do this, as we share with each other, we are changing, we are shifting the environment, we are shifting the energy of our planet. We are creating pathways and making safe the experience of sharing these things that used to be kind of taboo to talk about, or that used to make us worry that we might be rejected if we talked about these things. Now it's time. It is time to share your story. It is time to let these things out that you've been holding within yourself. And it's freeing, it's liberating, it's releasing. It's a way to not only express what you've been carrying, but to help other people, and to be of service, and to be generous. So I invite you to be generous with your stories, be generous with your sharing, to, let your children know, let your parents know, let your family members and your friends and your communities know who you are through telling your stories that you've been keeping to yourself. And maybe they're not mystical stories, maybe they're just personal experiences, or things that you've learned, or revelations that you've had through your experiences of life, or realizations, or your epic aha moments. Whatever those are, they are acceptable, and you are worthy, and you're worthy of telling your stories, and your stories can transform someone else's life. I guarantee that the thing that you've been hiding, the thing that you haven't wanted to share with others, when you share that, that can literally change someone else's life for the better. It can even have the potential to save someone's life. And that is the beauty and the blessing of being open, of being vulnerable, of being generous, of not worrying about looking good all the time. I mean, some of my stories are not they don't make me look so good, right? Not all of my stories make me look good. And yet it's when I share those vulnerable stories, or when I share those stories that maybe are not having me in the best light, someone else hears that and sees that and says, oh my gosh, I didn't know that happened to you too, or I didn't think that that was ever something, you would have done or would have happened to you. And now I feel better because that happened to me, or I had an experience similar in some way. So, when we were, back before we had television, telling us what to see, we told stories. We sat around campfires at night and told stories. We passed down our lineage through telling stories and through telling the mythology of our lineage and our history. And I would love to invite you to get back to that. If you are a parent, tell your children some special stories that maybe you've never shared with them about yourself, or tell your friends or other family members or other people in your community. But start to share your stories and see what happens. And my guess is that the more you share and the more you open up, the more people will feel comfortable and start opening up to you too. And this is how we create community and connection, and how we grow together and open our hearts to each other and learn about each other's lives and perspectives. And when someone has an opposite or very different experience or viewpoint on something than you, what if you just listen to that as their story and accept them for that anyway, and not have to have them see it your way or experience it the same way? That's what the magic of this reality is, that we all can have different ideas and viewpoints and still care about each other and still get along and still accept each other. So, my challenge for you today is share a story with me, a vulnerable story, a multidimensional story, whatever kind of story that maybe you haven't been open to sharing publicly before, in the YouTube chat. If you put that story in the chat, in the box below this video, I will read it. Now, if you write 2 pages of information, I might not be able to comment on everything you wrote, but I will read every single one, and I'll give you a heart or a thumbs up or a thank you for sharing. And I will read them personally. So share your stories and then comment on each other's stories, because this is how we create community. And so that's my challenge. And if you find this content helpful and interesting, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and share this video. And let's share our stories. Let's create community, and let's connect our hearts through sharing who we truly are. Thank you for listening. I love you. I cherish you. Namaste.